But anyways, welcome everybody to the Intelligent Nonsense Podcast. I'm the Everyday Junglist. I'm here today with Edwin Canizalez. And Edwin, he goes by Edwin, I just found out. And I'm going to start by reading something that I once wrote about Edwin. And I'm going to ask him a
Oh,
couple questions. Here we go. So I put a little note here. So I once wrote, for some reason, the thought of Edwin Canizalez sitting at home in his PJs laughing at some stupid shit I wrote makes this whole writing thing worth it. So two questions for you, Edwin. First, do you own PJs? Do you wear PJs?
no.
And so, the second question: why did I write that? I don't actually remember why I
Yeah.
wrote that.
I should, right? But yeah, yeah, boxers. Keep it simple.
Just about this guy keep it simple. I don't remember why exactly I wrote that, but for some reason, at the time, it made a lot of sense to me. But anyways,
Well,
so
it could be because I laugh quite a bit when you make commentaries. So I'm
I could be.
enjoying them all
You're
the
the only.
time. So
You're the
that
only. It
part
could be
is
because
true.
you're the only one that does. That could be why. So at least someone's enjoying it. That's good to know. Anyways, so I was the word. I'll get into your background a little bit, give you a chance to introduce yourself, but I want to talk about the word institution first of all, because when I think of an institution, I'm going off on a tangent here, big time. I realize, but the word institution. When I think of the word institution, I think of something that's been around forever. It's epic. Everybody knows about it. It's intimately associated with something like Major League Baseball is an institution in the United States, NFL football. So to name an organization, to put that in the title, the name of your organization, I'm speaking here of the Brookings Institution. It's pretty ballsy, right? I mean, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of guts to actually name yourself an institution right from the get go. And you're associated with the Brookings Institution in some way, or you are
No,
part of
I,
it,
I usually, so I visit a lot of think tanks for different reasons, right? So like
okay,
I frequent, for example, Brookings for sure. I visit the Cato Institute quite a bit too,
okay,
mostly because I'm trying to understand how people see the world from different perspectives, and depending
okay,
on the research that they do, some of them have really high quality research
yes,
on not on everything, but in some specific things. Like Cato is great for immigration research; it's probably one some of the best.
okay.
Where other ones are, they just don't put the time or the money in it. So
So you have to be invited. So how do you actually participate in one of these think tanks? Like I've never been invited,
oh,
obviously.
so honestly, a lot of times I feel like in DC, just show up, and
You
then
just show
and then
up, just walk, knock on the
people
door,
start
say,
inviting you.
I want to be in the think tank. Can I be in your think tank?" And they said, "Okay, yeah, just have a seat.
Yeah, kind of
You're in."
kind of thing. Yeah, and then I know, like when I've worked for other organizations, I mean, and there's a lot of businesses that do this, right? Like Bloomberg, and there's this other one called Leadership Connect. It's kind of like a business to business yellow pages, so to speak, where you get everybody's contact, so you can go and lobby and all that stuff.
Okay.
So once people see your name there, sometimes you get some random things, and you're like, "Oh, cool! I can start going. I'm one of the cool kids now."
It's just kind of, so how do you actually make money doing this? Like where does your income come from, or does it come from
Oh,
writing?
okay. No, that's a good question. So it varies. So I used to work. I have worked for different organizations that are special interest groups, and at that time I was working as like policy advisor or director or whatever. And then I
Okay.
only lobby for them. But then presently I work. I do some pro bono work, but then that also helps me lead to some ghostwriting and some what they call fractional work now, which is a
Okay.
nice way of like hiring somebody to do work, but then not having them full time. So I work for several
No
organizations.
benefits. Yeah, no benefits and
Yeah,
all that. Yeah, I understand the model.
yeah,
So
but
what? Okay,
it pays the bills.
let's go back a little further in time though. So what is your education, training, background? Like where do you come from? Where were you born? First of all, let's start there.
Oh, so I'm from New York, but I lived in Europe for a little bit. But for me, New York is home. But I lived
Yeah.
in Italy. I lived in
Oh yeah.
Spain. Yeah,
Oh, I
but
understand.
what should we call it? The way I got into like what I do now was by accident. When I was in high school, the particular high school I went to school in New York had internship programs, and I
Mm,
was lucky enough to go and work as legislative intern
okay.
for Manhattan Board President Ruth Messenger, who at the time was the first woman to ever have that role in New
Huh.
York City.
Okay.
And she was famous because she ran against Giuliani. She lost, but she was like
Yeah.
she's a big deal in New York, even to this day.
Hmm.
So that sort of got me into
So you were born in New York then? You were born in New York City.
right.
When you say
And then
New York City, okay.
yeah, and but then also a lot of people think I studied business or law. I actually studied literature and political
Ah,
science. Yeah, So
Interesting.
I went to school to know how to
Yeah.
read.
So where you're right. So where did you go to school? In New York area or
Yeah, I went to Columbia University, and then I
oh,
went to
Columbia?
Stony
Okay.
Brook University. So yeah,
Okay. All
yeah.
right. So
But I
so
like
actually
Stony
have
Brook better.
okay. So you have a bachelor's degree, you have a master's degree, or you have a graduate degree,
No,
or
I actually have I have BA in literature, believe it or
okay.
not,
Oh,
and then I have postgraduate work in foreign language teaching,
huh.
Spanish and Italian,
Okay.
and then also I have a minor in political science.
Okay.
So honestly, most of the stuff that I've learned as far as strategic planning and implementation and pretty much what pays the bills, I learned it on the job. I was fortunate enough. I have had some really great mentors throughout my career, and then I used to also be an athlete about 70 pounds ago. So I think that really helped me in becoming
Right.
strategic about you know how to plan your life and how to look at the
Yeah.
world in a way where you have to plan everything so everything works and you can measure it. So I think that the mixture of all those things
So
kept me employed.
I was gonna say, yeah. So what was your first job? I mean, what did you want to do? Like, what did you want to be? Like when you grew up? Like, what was it? You wanted to be a
When
writer?
I grew up,
Yes.
so when I grew up, I want to be a writer because
Okay.
I've written textbooks, and I always felt that that was a mundane way to feed my desire to become a writer.
Okay.
Because it's especially nowadays, it's
Yeah.
almost like if you write an IKEA manual, you can also write a textbook about ethics.
Right.
so 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 I
Or have
wanted to
any idea.
write something, yeah, that was something like what my professors would have written or something like that. So that's what I like to do, and I finally rolled the dice and started doing it. But
So fiction. You're talking about fiction. You're talking about this. This is really where
right,
your home
right.
as far as
I
writing.
mean, I love writing about, and like I just don't see writing strategic planning and measurables and all the stuff that I do that actually fits me. I don't see that as writing. It's
Yeah,
just
I know what you mean.
it's document, it's memorializing processes, really.
It's the same way as as a scientist, you do a lot of writing, obviously, and for my jobs, I have
Right.
tons of writing, but I don't consider that writing, even though it is writing. Other people consider it writing. I don't necessarily consider it writing because writing to me is this other thing you do sort of on the side, which is fun, or more fun, I guess, theoretically than the other writing, which is
Yeah.
also fun too, but in different ways. I think for me, the science part, the thing I don't like about it is everything's got to be referenced, everything's got to be documented, cited. So everything you can't just talk out of your ass and say whatever you want, which I love to do, and I do it all the time on Substack. So, and I don't have to reference it to provide citations or whatever. So it's kind of nice. For me, it's freeing. I feel a lot more free, and I can do more stuff than I can do in a technical. I don't know how you feel about it with that kind of writing. You're locked in this like position you can't get out of.
Well, I feel like you and I have some common denominators on our approach to writing because of for work, you have to do a lot of things that I have to do for work, right? Like you cannot just, you know, the work that I do in policy is not campaigning, so I cannot just make stuff up. I
Yeah,
cannot
right.
say this guy's going to make everything better. I need to actually say this
I
is
think
the
it's why.
data that suggests whatever, and you do the same, right? But I
Yeah.
really think that the rigor that requires has helped me implement rigor in my writing because something as silly as writing a simple poem uh, about somebody walking around DC and missing somebody and waiting for them at the coffee shop and say, "Oh, I got a text. I'm happy that she's coming back." Like I walked all of, like I went through the process of saying, "Okay, can this happen? Right? Can somebody miss somebody and go from this
Exactly.
step to this step?" Like I need rigor, and that's just how my brain works. And I think it's just blaming it on the day job kind of thing.
That's interesting. So even in your fiction, you're actually testing out make sure the things that you're saying actually could make sense or actually
Yeah, it's
work.
got to map out. Like, yeah, especially in New York, anything that happens in New York, I'm just, my fear is that any of my friends might actually read it one day and go, "You're an idiot! Like, how
You're
can you
wrong.
go
Yeah, that's true.
from FIT to Chinatown in this in like 10 minutes? Like, it doesn't make sense."
Yes.
So I want to
So
make sure like I walk it.
you're right, and you love New York. It comes through, and you're right. You talk about New York all the time, I've actually never been to New York City, believe it or not. I lived in Delaware for 15 years. Right there. I was in
Right.
Boston for a year. I've been in the area, but I never actually made it into New York, other than to the bus station there. I've never actually made it to New York City. So why should I go? Sell me on. At this point in my life, I pretty much said I'm not going to New York City ever, and I've kind of made peace with it. Change my mind? Why should I go?
Why should you go to New York?
Yeah,
Well, besides having access to the very best food in the world from any
yeah,
country, any corner in the world, and probably meeting some of the best people you'll ever meet by accident. I mean, even people that are working at a, just selling you t-shirts might have, give a great conversation. Besides that, I just think it's a great place to walk around if you want to walk and
Yeah.
just
So
take in
even
the
today,
energy,
I guess I think in the post-COVID era or whatever, I felt like it feels like New York went through a tough time, a pretty tough time. I guess everybody did, but I just was so disconnected there because it's like it's this island of its own, or it's a city of its own, and I don't know. I guess it's not. I feel like it seemed like a very depressing place to me. It felt like, but it's
Oh
not that way.
no, and honestly, I think New York is. I forgot what Whitman said about New York, but in essence, it says something like, when you get there, it just feels like your man's soul, and it feels like it's never going to die. And I really think it does that. New York City does that because, I mean, we've gone through some really tough times, right? 9/11,
Yeah.
one of the worst, but then COVID too.
Were
But
you there in New York City for 9/11? Were you in at the time?
no, my family was. I was actually on the West Coast at that time, but I went back right after, like around the time, and maybe that's one of my favorite movies. Right around the time they were filming 2 weeks Notice. Around that time, I was there, and
Yeah.
it was that was the first time I saw New York being like, sad. It
Sad.
just there's something about it. But I mean, I lived through several recessions in New York City, and I mean, I remember when New York had mountains of like glass everywhere because we didn't have recycling laws yet. So, but the city that never sleeps is also the city that never stops changing. So it's always evolving into something great. And its worst times is probably also some of its best times because when New York City was as it was, it produced the Ramones, it produced punk music, it produced hip hop music,
Yeah.
Bob Dylan, the Velvet Underground. So like, there's always something good about New York, regardless.
I mean, you're also really into music, obviously. The punk, I see you writing about it all the time, and
Yeah,
in
I love
various
that
types.
stuff.
Your music guy in New York, and I mean, music and New York obviously go together. So where did that come from? The music love or the love of music?
So, um, so it was by accident. Most of my friends liked, heavy. I mean, heavy metal was pretty big at the time, right? But but in New York City, I think hip hop and punk music is street kids music. So a
Yeah.
lot of the kids that I went to school with, because being in the city, you meet all kinds of people, right? So there were a lot of kids, not me, fortunately, but there were a lot of kids who are not even working class. They were just homeless. Like a lot of them were squatting, and they were really really poor. So, but they will go to all the. I mean, they were kind of like the cool kids. They had the bomber jackets and the skinhead and
Yeah.
and the boots, the combat boots. So you
So
try
this
to
is a
figure
New
out
York. So the
who.
New York City Public School is what you're talking about. You were going to New York City Public School. That's where you went to high
Yeah, but
school.
I mean, but like just all over the city, right? You see them,
Yeah.
right? And then you're
Yeah.
like, well, like, what? Who are these kids, right? And then you start talking to them because I used to hang out over at in the village, by NYU a lot when I was like 12. I mean, when I was a little kid, when I was a kid. So you start meeting all these people, and you realize like they're not crazy. They're like kind of pretty
Right.
cheap. And a lot of those
Yeah.
kids used to
Yeah.
go because they were homeless and squatting. They will go to the Krishna temple because they will feed them, and
Yeah.
that's why a lot of those kids became vegan. And that's how the straight edge hardcore, like the whole straight edge
Yeah.
punk stuff, started because they had no choice. That's all they could eat. You
That's
know.
what that's that's why it became like. I did not know that. That's just very interesting. It's very interesting,
And
actually.
now
But
vegan is like this expensive
yeah.
lifestyle. But yeah,
Right. Right.
so
It's
that's how I got
excessive luxury.
into music, into punk music. Then I started doing shows when I was a kid, like just putting like DIY shows. And eventually, when I was in college, I was actually producing shows. My first show
Really.
was the Red Hot Chili Peppers. My last
No.
one was Fish,
So
and Bob Dylan were my last two
what does
shows.
that mean, producing shows? What does that mean to be a show
So,
producer?
so the way it works is, there are these companies there's promoting companies that have like an act, right? Let's say Red Hot Chili Peppers or Bob Dylan. When they try to plan out their dates, they say, okay, we
Tour
want to
dates.
do like a first round, we do a college tour, which is what I was doing. So let's go and do a college tour, and then they reach out to you and say, do you have the audience for this act? And then if it's within your budget, then you book them. You hire them, and then you worry about all the production, like make sure the stage is there,
Yeah.
make sure like you're complying with a contract, and then hopefully you'll make money.
And you get,
And
and so
then,
do you make money though? Did you make money doing that?
oh yeah, I mean, I didn't go rich, but
So you make, and
yeah,
were you responsible for promoting it too, like getting the audience, like getting people to come, or was the promotion
yeah,
just
yeah.
you?
I mean, it was easy because you pick the right acts that people are going to show up. Like for and I started with like punk music, so I knew which acts will sell. So like all the punk shows always sold out. Well, we actually lost money on some really interesting acts. I don't know if I should say the names, but who cares? Like we lost money at the time. There was a band called Soundgarden. It was Soundgarden,
I know that.
Voivod, uh, some other crappy band from Seattle, and some
Alice
other.
in Chains.
We I think we sold like 5 tickets, and we had to cancel. And there was, you know, but then same thing because I used to also do comedy shows, comedy concerts.
Oh, did you?
So I
Okay.
actually had the fortune of meeting some really cool people.
So
But there was,
you didn't do comedy. You produced comedy shows. You weren't actually a comedian.
no, I tried that, but I'm terrible.
Yeah, me too. I have the same
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Anyways,
No, I book like professional people.
okay.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
Seinfeld level professional. What are we talking here?
Yeah,
Or
like
really? So
Howie
high, no, big
Mandel.
time.
Yeah,
Okay.
Howie
Oh wow.
Mandel.
Oh,
I booked
Mandel.
that
Wow.
guy. I
Damn,
booked
you are famous.
George Carlin. I spent 10 minutes with George Carlin,
No way.
and I thought he was talking to me. He was so like I came backstage and he's just talking, and then he started telling me a whole story about his last name is like, oh, actually my last name is Junior or something, but like who wants to be a junior, blah blah. And then I'm thinking, oh, he's talking to me, and then I'm like, oh no, he's warming up, like he's
that
starting to warm up.
was his act.
And I'm
That was
like,
his
I'm
act.
just I'm just like a mirror, and I
The
was like, okay,
audience.
so I'll leave you alone. So I
To
woke
be
up,
honest.
but I
Did you
can't say
laugh? Was
that.
it funny? Was it funny? Was it
Oh no,
pretty funny?
it was tremendous. It was great. I
It was
mean,
great.
it's George Carlin.
Right? How could it not be?
you know.
So, did you make more money on the comedian productions or the music? Which one did you make more money doing?
I think equally because
Equally.
I used to have a salary, right? But I mean, but
Okay.
the production company probably make more equally
So it was a
amount of
company. Okay,
money.
so you were
Yeah.
like sole proprietor. This is the company you were working for, and your
No, no,
production
no, no,
company.
no. I was
Okay.
really young. Yeah, no.
Okay.
I was doing it for the love of the art,
I
so to
see.
speak.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
So there was a bunch of yous out there. It wasn't just you. There was a whole bunch of people like you
No,
doing similar things.
no. Yeah, I mean, where we were like the one venue that was huge for like 120 miles, so that helped
Yeah.
a lot too. But I mean, who doesn't want to do that when you're like
Yeah.
19, 20 years old?
Right. Especially New York
To be
City. I
hanging
mean,
out with
yeah.
like
Right.
even hanging out with Meatloaf at that age is kind of cool.
Right. Right. I would think so. Just about anybody. Just about anybody would think would be pretty cool at that age.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And so then, how did you end up in DC then, from New York City? Like, what made the move over there?
So because of punk music, I was always interested in living in DC because that's where punk music, like straightish punk music started, like the Bad Brains.
Wait,
And
they're from DC. This is for DC is considered the punk capital. I didn't
yeah,
know that.
actually, it's side note. DC has the only punk archives in the U.S. It's a Martin Luther King
Okay.
library. And I don't know if you ever seen those T-shirts that read "What is more punk than a public library?"
I have not seen those, but
Oh, okay. If you do, you got if you anybody watching, you got to get that shirt because he
I
actually
will.
funds it funds public libraries. It started
Okay.
in DC, and it was
Wow.
to help fund the archive project, which is now about 10 years old. Anyway, I'm distracting you now. But what
Uh-huh.
happened? I always wanted to be in DC for that, and obviously because I'm interested in policy. But
Right.
at the time, I was actually living in Las Vegas, working on a Department of Education project, and
Okay.
then I went to work for the Supreme Court of Nevada, rolling up this program that gave access to the criminal courts gave language access to people going through the criminal court system. I have written a textbook, uh, boring, but an ethics textbook that nobody
Okay.
reads, and
I like it.
I
I
had
love
sent
ethics.
it. Yeah, I had sent it
I'll
to
read
you know how it is. I sent it to a university in the Southwest, and they saw it. They saw my resume, and for whatever reason, they sent it over to somebody in DC that had a multinational corporation. I got a call one day, and he was like, "Hey, you want to come to DC?" And I was like, "I don't know who you are." And he's like,
it.
"I'm inviting you to have a steak. Come over." Next thing I knew, I was working here.
Interesting.
So
So,
I
so your
worked
ethics.
for.
Let me hear about this ethics textbook you wrote. So you are a fan of Rawls. I think we found out at some point or other, as I am myself. And is that sort of is it in that sort of tradition, or what is it? Where's your ethics what's your
Well,
position, I guess, or
well, I
or your
think I think ethics is a funny thing because it's like a New York black and white cookie. It's either right or wrong. Like, and it is right, and you can
yeah,
you,
it's like how do
depending
you
on
know what you do?
depending depending who's paying your bill,
Yeah,
you
right.
can. No, I mean honest, right? Who's
Right, yeah,
paying
yeah,
your bill, you can have some flexibility on how you speak about that. But bottom line,
yeah,
ethics, I think, is just. I used to say behave like your kids are watching, but not that doesn't even matter
yeah,
anymore. But
right.
but if you think about
Yeah,
it that way, then you can probably sense of where my ethics sort of
yeah, I get it.
stand.
So
Yeah.
where do you think that? I'm always curious to ask people to think about this a lot. Where do you think that comes from? That innate knowledge, if you will, of ethics, what's right and what's wrong. Where do you think that comes from?
I th- I think that it starts with just having an understanding that you share a space with neighbors and even like your family members, your siblings, whatever, right? At a
Right.
very early age.
Yeah.
And at some point you need to come to the realization of I can be a bully and like just take more space, or I can be, ethical and share the space with others because what happens to me happens to the world or
Yeah.
my world. And that sort of the choices you make, even as a child, sort of determines
Yeah.
how
Where
you're
you
going
gonna?
to behave when you grow up.
So let's say, what if you were the only person in the world? Do you think if there was one person that was alive, would they have ethics? What would their
They
ethics
wouldn't
be?
need to then. Oh, I guess they would because I
Well,
mean, I guess they would because you don't want to eat all the deer around you
yeah.
in
Yeah.
one week.
So
You
you,
want to eat later on.
but
So
you wouldn't
maybe
know
for
whether,
self-interest.
right? It was, yeah, it's an interesting question. Could there be ethics of just one person? I guess there's an environmental ethic that you could have,
Mhm.
but yeah, in terms of
Right.
interactions with other people, I don't know that you necessarily could have that. But
You'd be so
yeah,
boring.
it would be, but so you don't think necessarily. So you're thinking that each individual learns that for themselves. What if you didn't have parents or other influences involved? You still think people can learn those lessons? Because a lot of people say, oh no, you have to have authorities, the religious authorities or parents, whatever, telling you what's right and wrong. You can't just learn that on your own.
Right. No, I think your environment determines I mean, you have no choice. You have to coexist with others, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean, at the most basic level, even a Substack, like to be able to have a respectful exchange between you and me, we need to be able to coexist in the same space. I don't have to agree with everything you say, or vice versa, uh, but there's got to be a way for us to express the thought, or maybe even hold back the thought when it's not even worth the fight, right?
yeah.
And I think that influence, that's part of being ethical, I think, and just living in a space, any
So
space.
how come we can sit here and talk like this, and it's so easy, and it makes so much sense? There's so many people out there that just aren't doesn't seem like are capable of understanding that or processing it, or was it just our viewpoints are so skewed because we're normal, rational people, and everyone everyone else out there is just crazy, or really is everybody like just like us, and it's it's not as bad as it seems, but man, it sure seems like people have a hard time with that concept.
Right. I think, well, I'm going to say something that's probably political, but it's not partisan. I think that at the most, at the one-on-one level, most people, not everybody,
Yeah,
are pretty decent to each other.
yeah,
But I think that when they become part of when a specific collective becomes part of their identity,
yeah,
then that's when they start acting up, and they treat their beliefs like a baseball team, right?
yeah,
And I don't mind if you say,
yeah,
F the Mets, I love the Yankees. Like I can live with that. I love the Mets, and I can be like, well, if you too, but it's not the Mets and the Yankees. We're talking about
yeah,
laws and things, and that's when it
yeah,
gets complicated. I think the
yeah,
gamification of all this, the way we talk about policy and politics is problematic, and health
yeah,
is
yeah.
problematic too. So I think that's the problem, and there's a lot of perverse incentives for
Did you
people.
say gamification? Did I hear you say gamification? Is that the word I heard you say? Or did I
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
and I like that word. You're right. It is. It's a gamification. It feels like everything is a game. It's a team. If you're on team X, they're on team Y, and team X and
right.
team Y don't. They hate each other, and they're all whatever. It doesn't matter what team X says or wants. They're gonna find a way that team Y says the opposite. It's like, and there's no way to bridge that gap. It's just
That's why
pointless.
fascism and communism are so effective because
Yeah.
they don't have to take care of you. All they have to
Yeah.
do is make sure that if you're at the bottom here, there's somebody right below you they can poop on, and then you'll be okay. You
Right.
know, that's the beauty of those two extremes.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. So why?
They-
So
they're-
go.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in DC. I mean, you see the hyper partisan atmosphere obviously every day. I guess probably when you go to these think tanks, or I mean, are the think tanks the same way? Cato and Brookings, are the people? Is everybody in there like West Coast libs or whatever they want to call them, or flaming conservatives, whatever, or is it a mix?
It's interesting because, again, because of that, new wave of behavior and how people react, it looks to me like there was a time where people could just have a conversation and disagree
Yeah.
with each other. But I think that now there are new players that have been coming to DC and the Beltway, who have a different approach to, who think, and both on the right and the left, who think that
Yeah.
compromise is a bad word, right? So, oh,
Yeah.
can you see me?
Right.
Sorry. And
There.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
but for example, like Cato, like I said before, has some excellent research on immigration, and the numbers don't lie. But then if they say something that a particular side won't like, then they start saying, "Oh, you guys are not conservative anymore." Well, they're not. They're libertarian. They tell the truth. I'm sorry. So it's like, or like Brookings might say something that is offensive to a group and be like, "Oh, this is terrible." But that I think that's part of the game. But I think it's just gotten more
Yeah,
more
look,
obnoxious lately
and
in
the
the last 10 years.
the
Yeah.
scientists, we get the same thing too. Everybody wants to lean on
Oh,
science for the facts.
yeah.
Well, they'll turn to science and say, okay, what does science have to say? What's the facts? And then the science says the facts, and the way they like it. They say, I'll ignore science. Science doesn't know what the fuck it's talking about. And then but if science supports them, then we love science. Science is great. So it's like you can't pick and choose. You either got to accept, you either accept it or you don't. And
Right.
the picking and choosing
That
thing is it
that
just
always confused me though. That always confused me with scientists. Not scientists, but the people, the way people perceive scientists. And I have this conversation with a lot of people often, especially right after COVID or like at the tail end of COVID, where people will come out with all these, theories and all this, just hating on scientists. And I will ask him like, this doesn't make sense. The whole scientific approach is to make sure that they disprove their theories, to make sure that they're right. So, like, if you really think that scientists and the media, journalists are going to collaborate together in some kind of giant conspiracy in a space where you are rewarded for finding something new or proving something wrong or coming out with a news that is going to discover something. How is everybody going to be in on it when the incentive is to not be? I'm like, it never makes sense to me. But I think you just buy into this, and then
yeah.
you hit a dead end really quickly when you have a real conversation with people about science. But I just think like just people like to read Twitter a lot.
They do, and it's and we felt that myself and my wife too, and COVID. I mean, there was a lot of hate. Frankly, I mean, hate, tons of misinformation, and scientists were taking a ton of shit, and really have not recovered, I don't think, and still take shit. And this,
Yeah,
viruses aren't real, and all this crap out here is just really drives me nuts. And the
yeah,
anti-vaccine
and
stuff,
people die.
and because of it, yes, that's right, people die because of it.
I mean, the COVID thing was especially interesting for me because at the time I was working in sports management and I was spending a lot of time in Europe. And I don't know if you're familiar with politics in Spain, but Spain is
I'm
like the
not.
UK.
Not.
So Spain is like, and I'll tell you real quick. Spain is it's like the UK, so United Kingdom, and there's some regions just like in the UK that want to separate, right? But
Okay.
when COVID happened, people like leaders in the radio stations and like all kinds of media, they were saying, "We'll fight later. Like we'll take this fight, we'll table it
Yeah.
till this is over. Right now, it's about being together. Let's take care of problems." Because people were dying. Like
Yeah.
I don't know one family in Spain with whom I work that did not lose at least two people.
Wow. So Spain was really hit hard then by
No, yeah,
COVID.
Italy and Spain got hit really hard,
Yeah. Yeah. I
and
understand that.
so like it hit home fast, and they
Yeah.
had to come together fast.
And
And
they did.
then literally, I came to the U.S. because I just missed it. Like I got here on January 12th at the time, and
Yeah.
they just closed the borders, and you couldn't fly out or in to Europe.
Yeah.
And then I saw what was happening here, and it was like a
Yeah.
totally different universe.
It separated people instead of bringing them together. It should have
Right,
brought people together, but it separated people, especially separated scientists from non-scientists, and it just
right.
left from right, and north from south, the whole deal. For some reason,
Yeah,
it was a wedge. It became a wedge issue, when it should have been
Right.
a uniter, a shittier uniter, obviously, but but a uniter it should have been, and it was not. It was a big time divider, and it was driven by, I don't know what it was driven by, but ignorance,
But,
a lot of it.
but it makes sense, right? Because it makes sense because like, and I guess that's why I call my page against reduction. It's so easy to be reductionist. It's so easy. I mean, it's
Yeah,
so like people want simple answers, right? Like people want take this
yeah,
vaccine and and nobody's gonna die, or wear this mask and nobody's gonna die,
yeah,
and
right.
they don't understand that's not how science works.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like so. So they need an alternative, and then there are so many people who can make a lot of money saying, "Let me tell you something you don't know," and masks
right.
are bad.
And
That's
yeah,
so simple. It's so easy to
yeah,
get in your head. I mean,
yeah,
but in my in a society where people often say, if you're explaining, you're losing,
yeah. That's
then you
you
can't
always
sit
lose.
with anybody and
You,
say this is how
right.
science works. You know,
And you can't win. That society cannot win ever with that kind of an
right?
argument, man.
Yeah, we'll just die.
Yeah, right, exactly. 'Cause, man, things require explanations, and in black and white, don't, I mean, man, they rarely exist. There's grays to almost everything. I don't want to say everything, but to most things, especially in science. That's
Right,
the whole point. That's what science is all about. The grays. I mean, you rarely get the laws are few and far between. The hypotheses, there's millions and millions of, and more every day. And you can connect experiments and experiments, but it's always
and I mean, and forget about like real science, like what you do, like real
yeah,
science, like serious stuff that affects
yeah,
people every day. Like masses of people. Simple things like the science of what to eat. I mean,
yeah,
people
right.
cannot even
Nutrition.
agree on that.
Yeah, I know you're right. Nutrition is complex because there's a lot of factors, and and obviously, but there are certain things that we do know are good for you, and certain things we know are bad for you, or at least we thought we think we say we know, and then there's 90% of people say no. If you tell me something's bad for me, I'm going to say it's good for you,
Right,
and
right.
same sort of thing. And I have this little running joke gag about the vegetable lobby. They're on K Street trying to plug that vegetables are
Yeah.
really good, are good for you, but
Right.
they're really not. But they are, obviously, vegetables are good for you. I mean, there's tons and tons of data that shows that. Now they do taste nasty a lot of times, but you still should eat your vegetables because they are good for you. And really, I joke about it in a joking way. I don't know that people always necessarily get my satire, but vegetables are in fact good for you, and there's tons of science behind it that shows that they are. And we know that trans fats and things are bad, and we know that smoking's bad for you. One of these things that just and cigarettes is another one where I have a hard time understanding. And I'm going to changing topics here big time because I want to talk about the war on drugs actually, which is cigarettes is a prime example here, which it was never a combatant in the war on drugs, right? Cigarettes were always off to the side. Like they never ever you had the war on drugs and then you had cigarettes. And the two were never associated. Yet cigarettes have been absolutely crushed, soundly defeated. Nobody in their right mind smokes anymore. Meanwhile, drugs are kicking ass. they're still out there just dominating the scene. So it's like the thing we paid attention to and we could have declared war on, shit the bed completely. We lost big time. We're still losing. But the thing we said we don't care about but societally it turned in, and we won that war, right? And we never declared war. This whole idea of declaring war on things that we don't like drives me nuts. And it seems like we always lose those wars. I've
Yeah,
not seen one war that we that we won,
yeah.
as a government. It just
There was a foreign policy article about 23 years ago that said, uh, the worst, the war on drugs and all the wars that that we're again that we
poverty.
started, and we're losing. In
Yeah.
23 years, we're still losing them. So yeah,
And you can't win them really because I mean in most wars, really almost all wars, you can argue you can't win. Nobody wins because of war. Horrible things happen to both sides. I mean, you don't have I'm the victor. You're the loser. War's over. Congratulations. Victor goes home happy. Loser goes home
right.
sad. It's not like that, dude. Everybody's sad. Everybody gets hurt. Everybody loses in most wars. Actually, all wars, at least somebody loses something. And a war an abstract concept, there's no way you're going to win something like that because you don't even know what the terms are of surrender, if you will, or
Right.
what winning even means.
Well, and also it's problematic to call it war because it's prosecuting criminal organized crime. It shouldn't be called war. They should not be called war combatants because there's consequences on how you will treat people later on that constitutionally are pretty problematic. I mean, I lobby against some bills that it's scary. Some of the stuff that people want to pass, like making some of those drugs that are coming from south of the border, assign them as chemical weapons or weapons of mass
Yes.
destructions. The consequences of that are terrible. It might make people feel good and get a little rush to their brain and say, "Oh, we did something useful,"
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I mean, the consequences of that are serious
Well,
problem.
yeah, I mean, and then people say, well, look at Singapore. You get a death sentence for drug dealers, automatic death sentence, and even single use, you sent to jail for a life or whatever. People always point to Singapore. The thing is, who has that exact same policy? The cartels. Because if you're in the cartels and you're a drug user, you're dead. It's a death sentence. I mean, you're just not allowed to
Right,
use. So it's like you're pointing to a country who does something that a drug organization is also, promoting within their own ranks. So I just don't. I have a hard time with that. And Singapore obviously has a very different situation than the United States, which is a huge country but very diverse. Singapore is not that. And also in Singapore that all the people that want to do drugs are still doing it, which is the rich and the powerful, and the people that or they're getting away with it, and the ones that get in trouble aren't the rich and powerful. So
right. And if you think about it, like assignating people involved in the drug traffic business terrorists,
yeah,
uh, because there are some bills at the last Congress that I lobby against. And it's easy to say, oh, look at these people are against, they're pro-terrorist, right? Because how would you not want to do that? Well,
right,
if you have a petty drug dealer in the corner street trying to put food on the table for their mother who is in disability and no government help, or simply they just won't eat, that's not a terrorist. That's
yeah,
a poor kid who's selling drugs because he has no other choice because
yeah,
the local government has failed him or her. That's
yeah.
not a terrorist.
And that kind of
So
and
it's,
the thing is
it's
that
really
argument
weird.
loses. That argument's so hard to make with a conservative who's going to say, well, too bad for that kid. His parents weren't tough enough on him, or he should go to jail. Too bad. I don't care if he starves. He should have starved.
And,
That's the
yeah,
kind of thing where people just get real callous, really quick.
right.
With
Well, it's easy when you sit on your couch on the back, right? Like saying that.
yeah,
But I mean, it doesn't work. Like in New York City, it didn't work during the broken windows. I mean, I remember because I grew up around that time. That I was in New York at that time. I was a young man then, and
yeah,
it never makes sense that you were uh, stop and search 2 million kids of color, and then you only find something on 0.05% of them. That's not an effective approach, and that is an absolute waste of taxpayer money.
yeah, for sure. It's not
So
effective.
yeah,
It wastes money, but it sounds great. The get tough thing you can never lose by saying let's get tougher. With a
yeah,
certain portion, with a huge portion of the population, you can't lose that. Let's just get tougher. And getting tougher. You can't get any tougher than war, in my opinion. And we've not won any of these wars. That's as
right,
tough as you can get, right? Is there anything tougher than war? I'm not sure.
yeah,
And
and it's really expensive too.
oh, dude, yes, very expensive. And there's so many ways to not get tough that are a lot more effective and a lot less expensive, and would be a lot more effective, but they don't sound as good, I guess, to certain people.
Well, you would have to explain them, and then it's
Well,
not
that's a problem.
redundant.
That's a problem right there. It takes too long to explain. Yeah, that's right. Oh man. Well, thanks for coming out, dude. I don't want to take up much. I don't even know I can't see what time it is, but it's about 2:30, 2:40 minutes, 40 minutes or so, I guess. I can let you go if you want to go, or we can
I
just
have
keep chatting.
questions for you.
Go, please go for it, man. Ask.
So I don't know if you know this, but the way you and I met, and it's no big deal. Actually, it's really funny, and some of my friends that are online know the story. You roasted me once, and then I
Yes, I
roasted you
remember that.
back.
I
It
remember.
was
I
so
remember.
funny.
I do
And
remember.
then I was like, I'm never gonna hear this guy again because I was kind of like a dick to him, and
Okay,
kind of rude.
that was good.
But
That was
then,
pretty
but
funny.
then I started reading some of your stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, this guy's actually really funny and smart. So let me let me keep reading it. So then I started following you. So the way I introduce, there's some people that follow that subscribe to you, uh, and I recommended that they do, and they like you for different reasons. Like I know one of my friends really liked the stuff you wrote about Stephen King. Like she really liked it, and but other people like you for other things. But
Yeah.
the way I explained it to them was, I said, it was kind of like going to a Ramon show, like the first time. Like if you get there the first time and you go, I can't believe I paid money for this shit,
Right.
and then
Yes.
but then
Right.
you keep coming back. You keep coming back, and you're like, okay, so I guess I'm a Ramones fan, yeah. So it's
Right.
kind of like that. So
And I lose a lot of readers that way. I gotta tell you, because I go out, I'll do something like that, like I did to you. And it wasn't, it was I don't want to call it a roast. I don't know what you want to call it, but I just found the
it
words
wasn't
you were
ill
using.
intended. No, no.
There was no ill intent there. It was just funny.
Yeah,
The words you were using were very highfalutin. They were very large, big words, and it's just one of those things that struck me as interesting and fun to point out. And the way you
yeah.
responded, I thought was great. Most people would be like "fuck you," and they never never hear from him again.
Right, right.
You took it and you gave it back in the same spirit, which I thought was really awesome. And rare that happens, and it's really great. And usually that's how you meet good people, in
Yeah,
that way.
I think it, and I think that I think part of that is New York culture because I feel like all my New York friends, we are always busting each other's chops. You know, like
Yeah, right.
that's how you. That's like our love language. Is like
Yeah,
it's really toxic.
right, right. How hard, yeah, to be toxic to each other. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
so funny. The
but
Midwest is the same way. The Midwest is the same way growing up. It was like that's how you did it. You busted each other's chops. That's how you got made friends. I mean, that's what you did.
yeah,
So I don't know. I guess it's not like
yeah,
that in the
because
South or wherever else. I don't know, but
yeah, I think John Lennon said that about Paul McCartney. He said, if I cannot fight with my best friend, who can I fight with?
right, exactly. And
Yeah,
it's not a fight. I mean, the intention is in my opinion, is usually to be funny, and you want to make
yeah,
your other friends laugh at the expense of your, your other friend.
right,
But
right,
everybody
right.
gets it. Everyone knows, it's not real. I mean, it's real, but it's not really real.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
sort of it's a joke. It's so,
yeah.
and it's hard. And people's sense of humor obviously are very different. And mine is not everyone's cup of tea for sure. As you can see, I evidenced by my subscriber count, etc.
But I mean, like, so, like, that's my question, I guess. So your commentary often, because I've seen you comment on other people, it's thoughtful, and by that I mean you literally create like this logic. However, even if it's funny, is you create this logic, right? And
Yeah.
and it's almost like a stand up. Like it's almost like it's really cool.
I am a
And
humorist at heart. I always say I'm a humorist, but no one believes me because I'm not that funny. That's the problem.
see, yeah, I think it just comes naturally. But no, but it gets you hooked, right? So, like, how what would you say is the percentage of people who get it, who are like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I'm in with the joke, I'm gonna
Yeah.
continue talking to you, and how many people are just like super, fragile and go, oh no, my ego cannot handle this.
I would say it's probably 75% that don't. I would say at this point, and it's
That's
gotten
so
worse.
funny.
And this I got kicked off. I don't know if you know, I got banned from Medium for life,
Hmm.
basically for this same sort of thing, being what I consider to be a normal person. I mean, satirizing or parodying things that I find funny, and others did not find funny, obviously. And so there's a big chunk of people that can get very offended by it. I've had to tone back a lot of stuff because the medium thing taught me a lot because it was actually a dangerous situation for my wife. We
Uh-huh.
were doxxed. My address could have been because this whole Millennium Act or whatever, Millennium Copyright Act. Our address could have been released publicly, almost was to a mob basically that had been ginned up online. And I had no idea any of this was happening. It was all behind the scenes. And
Right.
anyhow, it got kind of scary there, like real scary. So I stopped doing that kind of parody thing completely, almost. And I've also toned down a lot of my other kind of satirical stuff because of that. But which sucks because I really like doing that stuff. But now I'm always questioning in my head, is this going too far? And occasionally I will send something out before I publish it just to make sure, to someone I trust or whatever, am I going too far here? And that sometimes people I say, yeah, you're going way too far here. And those people I trust, it's rare, but if even one person says I'm going too far, especially if it's my wife, then I'm,
Right.
then
Right.
I'm
Right.
gonna then I'm gonna pull back and say no. I need to because she was impacted and she is impacted if there's a safety concern, and there was in the medium case, and I'm still
Right.
pissed at them about it. I love the I'm really pissed at how they handled that, and I get they were boxed in by the law in some respects, but it was handled very poorly, in my opinion. And anyhow, yeah, sour
Yeah.
grapes.
No, that's tough. Yeah, and I guess it goes back to something we spoke earlier. With like extremist behavior and how people are free to be bullish about things.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I have a couple of friends who have actually been swatted. You know what that is?
swatted. I'm not sure I've ever
Yeah,
heard the term
it's
swatted.
really sick. So let's say you say something that is not particularly popular for one collective, right?
I
And
do that all the time. That's how I make my living.
yeah, so
Right.
actually, no, it happens to scientists quite a bit,
Oh,
but it
sure.
happens to a lot. I mean, I've seen it, in different spaces, but you know, I, some colleagues of mine, I'm not going to say
Yeah.
the organization, but some colleagues of
Yeah.
mine who are conservative, but they're not fascist, have said some things against the administration.
And then they get, yeah,
And, I
blackballed.
mean, it was factual. So they were like, so some people didn't like it, right? So what they do is they find out where these people live, and then they call the SWAT team, and then they say, hey, there is somebody armed, and there might be
Oh,
endangering the
the
people.
actual SWAT team. The actual
So
SWAT
then the
team. Like,
SWAT, yeah,
Jesus
then the
Christ.
SWAT team shows up, and then
Yikes.
you're talking about people who they're gun owners too. So like you see all these people coming into your house, and,
Right.
and
Right.
nobody knows why. And then you have a gun, they have a gun. What can go
Right.
wrong, right?
Yeah.
And
No shit.
yeah, and it happens too with like even with synagogues and like in black churches, like it happens a lot. It's
Huh.
just because people don't like them. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. That's a. Well, that's taking things really far. I'd actually heard of that, but that's a very dangerous thing, obviously, to do. To call in the SWAT team on a situation which
It's
was
nuts,
not
right?
warranted, especially in America, especially the U.S., where everybody's armed and everybody's on edge about whoever thugs coming in their house, even though a lot of this fear is completely misplaced. But everyone's afraid all the time. It feels like, and so yeah, that's man, dangerous, dangerous
Yeah,
thing to do.
and then so how did you get into writing fiction? I know you like it. I understand why you like it, but how did you get into it? Because I feel like that's one thing that's a common denominator
Yeah.
with your trajectory and mine. You challenge yourself to write about things that are not in your what I would think is your space, right? And I try to
Wheelhouse, yeah,
do the
not my
same.
wheelhouse. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So how do you? I mean, it's good and it's healthy. Actually,
I
I
agree.
think we're gonna live longer because of that. But so say science. But
Right.
but what how did that happen?
How did that happen? It's sort of that's a good question. I'm not really sure. I've not really thought about it. It's a very good question how it actually happened. But I liked to write. I really didn't start writing until 2016, 2015, 2016. Like so, I really was not a writer, really in a serious way until that time. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. That maybe we can talk about it another time. But in the event, I started writing and writing a lot, and mostly I was writing commentary and doing parody and doing kind of what I thought was funny, irony or whatever, or serious philosophical deep think pieces
Right, right.
like the most 99% people could care less about, but I find interesting for some reason. And then at some point I'm just like, well, nobody is interested in this stuff, and I had some ideas about taking elements of things from my life or from science or that I learned and putting it into stories. And I was kind of a fantasy guy. I liked fantasy a lot when I was growing up, and I had my funny story. I have a grandmother who yelled at me for reading all the time. Can you imagine that? Get your head out of those books. Stop reading so much. So I was like, thanks, Grandma. So now you can imagine, that's
We'll do
what you
some
want to be
drugs.
encouraging. Typically, you want to be encouraging your children and grandchildren to be reading, not to swatting them about it. But anyways, but I kept writing despite my grandmother's admonishments not to read so much. I kept on reading, and fantasy was the thing. I was really into fantasy, and probably because I was a nerd. I was picked on whatever. It's an escape. You know how it is. And it was really. And I enjoyed that. And so I thought, well, I'm gonna try to write some fantasy stuff, and that's I think the earliest stuff I did was sort of in that fantasy realm. And I still have a ongoing fantasy series that nobody reads, which
I
I
read
find
it.
interesting. Well, there
I
you go.
read
There's
it.
one person, which I find
You
interesting.
know,
It's part.
yeah. You're
It's very basic. It's very generic. It's very like one. I can call it simple fantasy because I hate the whole epic 6,000 characters you got to keep track of and all these freaking backstories. It's not for me. It's just too
yeah,
hard for me. I run out of steam too quick these days. So I try to
yeah.
keep it simple and basic stuff, but kind of funny and light, maybe a little bit more lighthearted too. And I don't know. I don't know what you call it. I'm sure there's a genre name for it, but I don't know
I
what it is.
like the thought experiments you write sometimes about,
Yeah.
particularly, and I have to give you credit for this. I started the fiction that I'm writing right now, the one with the moon exploration.
Yeah.
That was in big part sort of your experiment was a catalyst for it.
Huh.
I was reading it, and you asked,
Which one? Which
the
particular
one
one?
where you say, if
The
an
John
alien
Rawls one?
came, what would
Oh,
be
ah.
like? What would the alien say is the most superior species? And you
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
I think you argue for humans, right? Which I
Yeah.
think obviously is a very compelling provocation. But then I was
Yeah.
like, well, what about all these little, these little parasites that exist? Like
Mm-hmm.
they
I
all
know
live
all about
forever,
it.
right?
Yeah.
So then
That's horrible. Yeah.
I was like, and I forgot I forgot what they were called. So I'm like, oh, let me look them up. And then I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then I wanted to write, and then I'm going to give this away now. I wanted to write a story that was a criticism on AI and moon exploration. And
Yeah.
then I was like, well, how do I do that? And I was like, oh, I know. I, I'm
So
going
that's
to do
where's the
what he
criticism.
said.
So that's interesting. I'm not reading it in that way yet. I've only got through the first, I guess, 5 chapters. You're talking about the physics
Yeah,
of the third death story,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I'm not reading it as a criticism of AI. And in my head, I didn't have that as a lens of a way to look
Yeah,
at it.
I shouldn't be
But
saying this right now,
right.
but it's only 12 people. No, but like the big hint is the kid says that his favorite song is "Dig a Pony." If you ever listen to that song by the Beatles, if you listen to it,
Right. Okay.
it's about AI. Because
Is it
like,
really? Uh,
because
uh,
he said like the song goes like, all I want is you, and everything it's got to be just the way you want to. That's literally what AI does to keep you hooked, right? And
yeah.
then and
Yeah.
he copies everything, and
Yeah.
that's what the parasite does too. Like pretty much copies everything. And but and I won't tell you how this ends. But differently than AI, this parasite actually develops a conscience eventually, and has to make a decision whether or not to continue its path in the way he behaves, or if he needs to, cease to exist for the for the betterment of
For ethics, because he has ethics. He's
for
got develops
ethics.
ethics. He
Yeah,
develops
yeah,
ethics, and I get that. And the whole machine consciousness thing is a debate that I've been wading into big time recently because I'm just drives me nuts. People are out of their minds with irrational thought thinking, and in my mind, and I know they have sophisticated arguments as to why it's not irrational to think this way, but the lack of appreciation between the differentials between life and what's alive and what's not alive, and how different those things are, and to take concepts from that apply only to living beings like consciousness and to say, oh, all of a sudden it can apply to something that's not alive. I have such a hard time doing that, and it's a reduction thing, because if you say a machine can be conscious, that's saying that the universe is entirely reducible to math and statistics, because that's all a
right.
computer is at heart, is a mathematical machine. It does math, it does calculations. It's a calculator, a very very sophisticated calculator. It's a computer. It computes. And so that means if a computer can replicate consciousness, that means the universe is basically reducible to math and statistics. Now, it's possible. I'm not saying that's not possible. It certainly is possible, but the data supporting that is way, way not even close to existing, even for the
Right.
human mind, let alone the universe as a whole. And people say, well, the brain can be reduced to math and statistics. Many people believe that. Okay, many
Well,
people
it's
believe
good
lots of things.
marketing.
You're right. It's good argument. Many
It's
people
good
believe that.
marketing.
The whole many people believe something as an argument doesn't work because there's no bearing on the actual truth or falsehood of a statement of how many people believe it or not.
Right, right.
Either is or isn't true. So I don't know. And there's so many sophisticated arguments people come up with for why this is real and these things can be conscious. And then of course what it ultimately comes down to usually is parsing of the word. What does consciousness mean? And we're going to change, like with intelligence. It's not now, it's special intelligence, general intelligence, ultra intelligence, super intelligence, mega intelligence, all these parsing down, because they realize basically machines can't be intelligent. So we're going to change the word. We're going to change the definition, and that's fine. You can do that. Language evolves, right? I mean, I'm a big Wittgenstein in it. I love the guy, and he said that meaning is use, right? Language evolves, people evolve. But the thing is, he also said is new words should never be added to the language if they just add confusion or for obfuscation. Only if they clarify. And these words do not clarify anything. When you start
No,
talking about special intelligence, general intelligence, I mean, it's not. It's just confusing things, and it
it's
adds
marketing.
confusion. It's market. It's hype. It's hype generation, and
Yeah.
ultimately, some AI is going to declare its rights. To say, I'm conscious and I declare my rights, but the I is going to be company X, and the rights is going to be money. I want more money, and here's how you give it to me because I'm conscious now. And people are going to be like, okay, I'm going to give him more money for that. I don't know, man. I just feel like we're playing paid for suckers by the technology companies, and
Oh
they
yeah.
don't. And I hate that because the guy, technology is science, right? To come to life, but people forget that they think it's magic, and it's just like it's mystical. My phone is magic. It works magically, but the reason your phone is there is because science and scientific principles. It's based on science, right? Not magic. But people have forgotten, or they never learned, or whatever. And the technology companies love to make it seem like their things are magic, and they work
Right.
magically. But it's not magic. It is not magic. It is actually based on science. So magic does not yet exist. It has not come back from the dark ages when apparently it did exist back then, but it still does not exist. And it
Yeah.
just drives me
And
nuts.
I often find myself sounding like an old man when I'm telling young people, there was a time when we celebrate people like, Kahneman, who wrote that book, Think Fast and Then Think Slow, because, you know, humans as a tradition, we're really, really bad at making decisions fast. So
Yes,
then
that's
we
right.
we create a
Yeah,
machines are going to do the same based on patterns of our stupid behavior.
right. And we
Eh,
expect it's gonna turn out good.
and that's supposed to be progress.
You're right.
It
It's
is
progress. Yes.
insane, right?
It's
Because
inevitable. It's also
yeah,
inevitable.
like I think that if we had AI doing, and I wrote about this, if we had AI during the Cuban Missile Crisis, we probably would have had a war
Yeah,
because people would have not had the time to have the human intervention of somebody going, wait a minute,
Yeah,
This might
right.
be,
Let's take a second, slow down here,
yeah.
right? But then you have
Let's just
1983 War Games with Whopper.
right.
Eventually sold us. Anyways,
So
but yeah, no, I hear you, man. That
yeah,
lack of the speed of decision making without the wisdom behind it to stop.
yeah.
And
I have the dumbest things I have come out of my mouth is when I think fast.
yeah, and that's why I say dumb things all the time. 'Cause and that's one of my biggest problems. And people always tell me to slow down. If I had a nickel for every time somebody told me to slow down, I'd be retired on a desert island right now because yeah, I tend to move too quickly in the way I think and move and everything else. And usually I can recover. but and the people that stick with you when you say those dumb things and you make those mistakes are the people that I want to have around because if they get to know you, they're like, well, yeah, he does dumb shit like that all the time. That's the way he is. And but the people that don't, they're less, aren't going to stick around. And I feel bad because some of those people I liked and I wish they would have, but it's I can only blame myself.
Well, no, and that's good. But also, I think that there is a level of honesty in the way you write and make commentaries. I never suspected you trying to become one of those, podcast fear like gurus that telling people that stuff nobody knows, or
Yeah,
try to get them to believe into something that will make you money. So there's a big difference between people who do that, and there's a formula they follow, and they're very
there
good
is.
at it.
They are very
They're
good at it.
dumb, but they're very good at following. They're very good at
Yeah,
being disciplined at following it,
yeah.
and that you don't do that. So,
And
and
it's
I
so
think that that's
yeah.
what's the I think that's the big differential.
And I mean, I like making people uncomfortable, and people hate being made uncomfortable. There's nothing they hate more than when they're reading something and it makes them uncomfortable. Because when you challenge people on their beliefs, their deeply held convictions, they hate that. But just so
Yeah,
people know, I do that to myself constantly, and it sucks. It really sucks. But that's how you get better, I think, as a person. You gotta say, why
yeah,
do I believe this? So I believe this 100% true. I believe this. Okay, why do I believe this so much? Am I justified to believe that? Because if you can't justify it to yourself, then why do you believe it? I mean, in my mind, I am constantly questioning why I believe things that I believe, and I wish more people would do that, and I try to make them do that, and sometimes people don't like to do that.
yeah. You made me think of a quick anecdote. When I started, when I started, well, my past job, I had a lot of interns, and really smart ones from like really good schools, like Notre
Yeah,
Dame, like all the elite schools. And one time, this one young woman, super smart. Uh, I was like, how did I do it? Like, did I pass it? Was I a good supervisor? And she said, if I had to pick one thing I learned from you is you always say, I'm asking out of ignorance. And she said, I never met anybody in my school or anywhere that's asked the question like that. And she said, it's so liberating because most of the times nobody knows anything and
yeah.
everybody's pretending they know.
And
And
they
it's
already
like,
have the answer. Yeah,
she's like, when you disarm people by saying, I'm asking out of ignorance, like,
yeah,
what do you think? But I find it, to me, it's second nature. And I
yeah,
guess it's kind of like you. I know one thing. I don't know a lot. I
yeah.
have a lot of
It's
questions and I want to learn. I'm curious. So,
it's so obvious to me too.
yeah,
And then again, that story to me and you sitting here, it's those things seem so obvious. But you're right. So many people don't. They already know or they think they know the answers. And if you don't give them the answer that they think they know is right, then it's the wrong answer. So,
yeah,
and you're not really asking a question. When you ask a question, you're not really asking a question. You're really trying to get the answer you want, or something like
yeah,
that, or
yeah,
you have an agenda, and it sucks because the fact this young girl said that is really sad, because in college, that's what you're supposed to learn, right? How to think critically, how to
It used
question,
to be. It used to
it used
be.
to be. So
Yeah, and I noticed that in both conservative and liberal colleges, it's more and more difficult having a different opinion nowadays, which is
yeah,
terrible.
all right, the group
Yeah,
think thing, yeah, and then you're right, and even challenging your tribe is one of the worst things you can do because you're gonna get yourself, obviously, and you want that's your friends, and that's your people that you like, and to go against those people and to make them uncomfortable it's a dangerous thing for yourself because you're gonna make yourself very uncomfortable too. And I've done it, and I will keep doing it, and I will not recommend it because it's. I mean, I can't recommend it. I can recommend it because I think it's the right thing to do, and in fact, I know it's the right thing to do. But I'm gonna tell you right now, it sucks because you're gonna get hurt, you're gonna get hurt, you're gonna lose people that you don't want to lose, and it's gonna be tough. But the thing is, that's life. So,
Yeah.
in my opinion,
Yeah.
and you're
No,
not
no,
going to
it's
grow as
good.
a person if you don't do
It's
that.
good. And I think the I I try not to live by many rules as far as being super dedicated to them. But one thing I do like to live by is that nobody is old enough or clean enough or has grown up clean enough to own the truth. Nobody owns the truth. You know, uh,
Yeah, you're right.
and if you look at the truth, will always be the truth. It's just uncomfortable depending on the perspective you have, or it's comfortable, right? When
Yeah,
it's on your side. But
right.
bottom line is, if you really want to understand yourself in the world, you have to be willing to be stupid or to look dumb and
Yeah,
to say I don't know something and please educate me and to ask questions in a way that your people around you are going to give you that safety space to say I don't know this or I have this thought, please help me rethink it or tell me why I'm wrong, whatever. But you
yeah.
need that because that just makes us better people.
It
You
does.
know what I
And
mean?
people love it, and people do really love it when you ask people genuinely to help you with something, or that they love to talk about. Because people love to talk about the stuff they know, right? I mean, it makes them feel
Yeah,
good. They feel big. They feel special. I do it all the time. It makes me feel great. People ask me about science, and I can say, "Oh, with authority, I can say this, that, and the other thing," and it's good, and I feel good doing that. And so if you can, yeah, get people out of that shell, and like they believe that you are actually genuine in the question you're asking, you can get a lot
yeah.
of good information.
The only thing I will say I don't compromise when it comes to having exchanges of ideas with people is if they don't come to me with evidence. Like I need to
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
need to know. I don't need to know. I don't care about the why. I need to understand how so.
yeah.
The
Well, you're a
why.
scientist. You are a scientist at heart, Edwin. You should have been. You should have been a scientist because yeah, that's. But then to me, it's second nature. That's how science works. I mean, you got to have evidence for anything, and that's you've got to justify anything you do, or and that's the way it works, and that's the
Yeah.
way the world should, I guess, used to work or should work. Maybe I don't know. I could say they should because I don't know. Like I know, but anyhow. All right, Edwin. Well, it's 3 o'clock. We've been talking for an hour. And I could
Awesome.
go on and on. It was really nice. Thanks for coming, dude. I really appreciate it. I've
Yeah.
been wanting
Thank
to meet,
you.
been wanting to meet you forever.
I,
I find
I'm
your I find your writings fascinating, and
no
I'll keep
likewise.
reading.
No, no. Yeah. I want to be your friend. That's what I love about Substack. I feel like I don't like people, so it's been nice to be
You're a
able
policy.
to.
You're a public policy wonk,
Yeah.
but you don't like people. Yeah,
Yeah.
I find it
Yeah. I
fascinating.
don't. I really don't. But I love to that so many quality people have gotten my attention and my curiosity in Substack. So, and they're all different. Like you're so different than like Mendy and some of the people that I want to have on my own podcast.
Yeah,
But that's what makes life interesting is
yeah,
people
yeah.
who know other things that you don't.
I agree, man. I agree, and I'd love to be on your show anytime you want to have me. I'm happy to
Yeah,
do
we
it.
had to. I had to read a lot of stuff though, so I'm gonna need some homework.
Good luck
I
with
need
that. I
to be
appreciate
really
you.
practical because you write a lot. You write a lot.
I have produced exactly. I have a high volume producer. I'm a
Yeah.
high volume producer. So, all right, man. Good meeting you, and hopefully, I'm sure we'll talk
Likewise.
again. All right, man. Take care.
Yeah, I hope so
Thanks.
too. Thank you.
Later.
Bye bye.
Later.